Hi everybody, my name is Arthur and welcome to another PixelPAD tutorial. We are creating our Clash Royale light game, right? And last video we made so our ghost now is not spawned anymore when we press play, but once we click on the game. And our ghost is always spawned on the castle's position, on the player base position, and it moves to the right, right? We made it by changing this unit code here, the unit class. We added here on the loop tab this code that keeps always making the player to move to the right. So if you haven't seen that, just go watch last class. Right, so the last class I said that each of these classes is a behavior, right? And each one of them defines how each one of these stuff will work. So how the castle will work, how the background will work, how the bridge will work, and how the unit will work. You can see here that my unit on the start tab doesn't have anything, but all my units, it doesn't matter how many I create, all my units will behave like this, will keep moving to the right side. So what I want to do now, first thing in this class, is to clean our game class. And what do I mean with clean? So I mean by removing any code that we don't need here and putting them on their classes. So for example, we have here field is a background. And then later I say that my field sprite is a new sprite with this name, right? So I have just one field in my game, and I have just one background in my game, and that's my field, and it has this sprite here, right? And I'm not gonna change this sprite, never. So I can say that all my backgrounds, that is just one that I have, will have this sprite, right? So I don't need to say field.sprite equals a new sprite river background.png here on the game start tab. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna remove this code from here. So I just create my background here on the game class. And you can see that when I press play, I don't have my background anymore. But what we're gonna do is I'm gonna go to my background class, and here on the start tab, I'm gonna say that all my backgrounds that are created, in this case we have just one background, that is the field background. Whenever this background is created, the first thing it's gonna do on the start tab, once it's created in the game, is to set its own sprite. So it's not my game who will set its sprite anymore, it's itself. So once the background is created, it's gonna say like, okay, I have a sprite and this is my sprite. So to do that, we can say the same thing we say here. For example, enemy base.sprite equals a new sprite with this name. We can do the same thing, but instead of saying background.sprite, I can say self.sprite. So my own sprite, and in this case, I'm referring to the background, right? So my own sprite is gonna be a new sprite with the name river background.png. So river background.png. So I'm saying that any background that is created in my game will have this sprite here. So now you can see that I create here my field background, right? And I say that it is a background. And before, when I pressed play, it only created the background for me. It didn't added a sprite to it, right? But now when I press stop and play my game again, I have my background back because I say that my field is a background and all my backgrounds have a sprite that is a new sprite with this image here. Right, so let's clean this game tab now. You can see that I removed one line already, right? Let's keep removing more lines. Okay, let's go on to the castle. I say here that my player base is a castle, but I also say that my enemy base is a castle. All right, so my player base.x is minus 500 and my enemy base.x is 500. So they are different, right? So I cannot say that all my castles will be minus 500 because I have a castle that is 500, right? And I cannot say that all my castles will have this sprite here, castle.png, because my enemy castle, my enemy base, has a different sprite. So I don't need to put any of these inside the castle class because each castle will have a different position and a different sprite. Okay, so the castle can stay here like this. I create a castle for the player, and this castle specifically has this position, and this castle specifically has this sprite. And I do the same for the enemy base, right? It has this position and this sprite. Okay, but let's go for the bridge. The bridge, you can see that even though they have different positions for the Y, they have the same sprite here as well. So even though it's the top bridge or the bottom bridge, they have the same sprite, bridge.png, right? So I can say that all my bridges will have this sprite. So I don't need to have this code here or this code here as well. I don't need each bridge to recognize their own sprites. I can just go to the bridge class and say that this class has a sprite that is a new sprite with the name bridge.png. So every bridge that is created will have this sprite here, right? So I removed 2 more lines from my game. Okay, now you can see that I stop and play, and the images are still there, working as ever, right? So we've reduced a couple lines here. You may think that it doesn't make that much difference, but if you stop to think that in a game we have many different classes and objects, right? Objects is when we create a class inside the game. So for example, here I have just one class. This is a castle class, right? But I have 2 objects from the castle class. I have the player base and I have the enemy base, right? So when we have many objects inside the game, we don't want to keep repeating the lines again and again for the same, for the objects that are very similar, right? For example, the bridge, they all have the same sprite, so I don't have to keep repeating it again and again. All right, so we fixed this, which is good. We're gonna use more the classes from now on. So the first thing I want to do now is to create a card on my game. So I want to create the ghost card on my game, because right now I'm just pressing anywhere in the screen and it's creating my ghost. But instead, I want to press right on my card, that is gonna be around here. And when I press right on my card, then I create my ghost, right? So here, I'm gonna look first for a sprite. So I'm gonna go here on the sprites and the plus button. And here I'm gonna look for the ghost card. That should be right in the beginning. Here, my ghost card. So I select that, select asset, and I'll call that ghost card. Press OK, and I have my ghost card here loaded into PixelPAD. And as I'm gonna create a card, I'm gonna need a class for a card because I don't have a class for cards, right? So I'm gonna need here, that's gonna be a new behavior. A card will behave differently than any other class that I have in my game. So this class will be called card, uppercase C, because it's a class, right? Press OK. And now I have my class card here, my card class here. So I'm gonna go on my game class and I'm gonna create my ghost card once the game is started. I want it to be created with everything else, my card right here. So I can say here that my ghost card is a card, and that already creates for us a blue square in the middle of the game because we don't have a sprite for that. So even though we're gonna have more cards in our game, each card will have a different sprite, right? So for example, I have a sprite for my ghost card, and later I'm gonna add a spider, and the spider will also have the sprite for the card. So they're gonna have different sprites. So I don't have to go on the card to define its sprite because each card will have a different one. So I can say here that the ghost card specifically will have a different sprite. So the sprite of my ghost card is a new sprite from the file with the name ghostcard.png. Now you can see that my ghost card is created right in the middle of the screen, and I want to move this card around. I want to bring it to the bottom left here, right under my castle. So I can say that my ghost card.x will be 500 maybe. Let's see. Stop and play. Yeah, I just have to bring it down now. So I can say that my ghost card dot y is equals, to bring it down, 300. Let's see. Stop and play. No, it went up. I need minus. Minus 300 will bring it down. There you go. I'll put it up a little bit. So 250 should be fine. There you go. I prefer this better. You can put it on any position you want. I'll leave it 300. There. Okay, so now I still clicking on the screen to summon my ghost, but instead I want to click only on top of the card to spawn my ghost. And to do that, we have to know where we are clicking, and we have to create something that will detect where we are clicking. So I will need a class for my pointer, for my mouse, and then I can see if this pointer is colliding with the bridge or colliding with the castle or colliding with the card. And then here on the game loop, what we only do is we check if we have pressed the left button. But once I have my pointer, I can check if I have pressed the left button, and instead of spawn the unit right away, I can check before I spawn the unit if my pointer is touching the card. If the pointer is touching the card, then I spawn my unit. Okay, so I will need a class pointer. I'll add here a new class called pointer, and this will be my mouse pointer. I press OK, and I created my pointer card here, my pointer class here. And then now I'm gonna create this class inside the game. I will say here that my mouse pointer, my mouse pointer is a pointer. And you can see that when I press play, I create my pointer over there. So my pointer will behave on a very unique way. It will always follow my mouse. It will always be on the right position of my mouse, right? The same position of my mouse. So I'll go inside my pointer class. In the loop tab, I want to keep saying, keep updating your positions to the mouse positions, to be always the same as the mouse positions. So I can say that this pointer X position will always be the same as my mouse X position. And to get my mouse X position, I can just say mouse underscore X brackets. So if I stop and play my game, you can see that my pointer will always follow my mouse in the X axis, right? So I can also say for my pointer to follow my mouse in the Y axis as well by saying self.y is gonna be the same as mouse Y. So I stop and play, and now my pointer is always following my mouse, as you can see, right? That's very cool. So the next step is to remove this blue square from my pointer. I don't want to keep seeing my pointer around, right? That would be weird. I just want to see my mouse. And I want to create a hitbox for this mouse. So how far can I be from the card so I can click on it and the hitbox of the mouse will trigger that card? So to do that, we need to give a sprite to this pointer, right? The hitboxes are always attached to the sprites. So the hitbox will always be the same size as the sprite I have my pointer. Right now, I don't have sprite, that's why we have this blue square. So that means that my pointer doesn't have a hitbox, right? My card has a sprite, so this is the hitbox of my card, the full card image, right? So if I want to have a hitbox for my pointer, I will need a sprite. So we don't have a sprite for a pointer right now, but we can choose any of these squared sprites here that doesn't have an animation, and we can resize this square and make it invisible to be our hitbox. So for example, I'll get here this grass tile, I'll select asset, and I'll call this tile as pointer hitbox. That's how I'm gonna call it, pointer hitbox. I press OK, and I'll go inside my pointer in the Start tab. So I have just one pointer in my game. I don't want to keep adding more code here in my game class, right? And I just want to say that all my pointers, or the only pointer I have in my game, will have this sprite here. So I'm going to go inside my pointer, Start tab, and I'm going to say that I have a sprite that is a new sprite from the file with the name pointer hitbox dot png. Okay, that's better to see, right? So my own sprite, I have a sprite that is a new sprite from the file pointer hitbox.png. So now you can see that when I stop and play my game, I can see the green tile here, right? I cannot see the blue square anymore, but that's fine. So imagine that this blue tile, this green tile here, is the hitbox of my mouse. That means that if I had my mouse here, this would already detect as a click in my card, right? Because the two are touching each other, right? So I want to make this hitbox smaller because I think that's a huge hitbox for a mouse click. So what I can do is I can mess around with the scales of this green tile. So on my pointer Start tab, I can say that this has a different scale for the x-axis. So I can say that scale x will be different. So the normal size, this size here you're seeing, the regular size is always gonna be 1. So you can see that if I press here, if I put here 1 for the scale x, I stop and play, it doesn't change anything, right? It still is the same size. But if I want it to be half of the size, so what is half of 1? 0.5. So this should make my green tile to be half of the size on the x-axis, right? So I stop and play, and now you can see that it's stretched, right? But it's half of the size on the x-axis. I'm not changing the y. So let's keep going. 0.5 I think is still too big, so I'm going to do like 0.3 maybe. That's way thinner, right? Let's change the y as well, just to see better how it looks like. So I can say that self.scale y. So just pay attention, this is uppercase x and this is uppercase y. Is gonna be, so if I want to have a perfect square, I have to use the same number as here, right? So 0.3 as well. So if I stop and play, now that's my mouse hitbox, or my mouse collider, right? I think I can still make it smaller, so I'll try 0.15 maybe. There you go. There's more like a hitbox for a mouse, right? It's pretty small, it's just on the tip of my mouse, and I have to get really close to the card to be able to click on it, right? You can even make it smaller if you want. So right now what I want to do is, I don't want to keep seeing this green square everywhere my mouse is. I want it to be hidden. I don't want to keep seeing that, right? So what I can do is, I want to move this green square to behind my background. So it will always be behind my background. It will always be there. We'll just not see it, right? Because it will be hidden. So I will stop my game here. I'll go to my game class. And if I want to make my mouse pointer to be placed behind my background and I can never see that, I can just move this line here where I create my pointer to before I create my background, right? So I can say that my mouse pointer is a pointer before I say that field is a background. So this will create my pointer first, and then later it will create my background on top of my pointer. And you can see now that my pointer is gone. I mean, it's still there, it's just hidden by my background, right? And that's the class for today. We have our pointer hidden by the background. And the next class, we want to make this pointer to actually click the card and spawn the units only if we're clicking on top of the card and not everywhere on the screen, right? And we might also start making the units to walk towards the bridge and then towards the enemy castle, and not just move right forever, right? So make sure you save your game, and I'll see you in the next class. Bye!